Shivaya, Shivaya Namo. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namo. Hara Hara Mahadeva. 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 Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namo. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namo. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namo.
There are those who are afraid to take up sannyasa. And I would like to say that's not what one should be afraid of. Sannyasis know what one should really be afraid of: fear of samsara. That's why they choose sannyasa, because they figured out whom to fear and whom not to fear. Although sannyasa is not the easiest status, but it is the truth. And as they say, it's better to walk a difficult but true path than a pleasant one that leads you astray. For example, you walk along a road full of thorns, a rocky road not well prepared. But at the end, a treasure awaits you. On the other hand, you might be driving down a luxurious highway with perfect markings and beautifully laid asphalt. But there's no treasure there, and possibly at the end there's even an abyss. Which path is better to take? On the first road, you walk and stumble, and sometimes you even have to crawl. Sometimes you fall. In general, there's no real road. It's wasteland, weeds, thorns. You have to force your way through. Sometimes you have to pull out the machete and clear your way forward. But on the second road, you can drive along easily with the wind in your hair. But at the end of each road, there is its own fruit. That's all the difference.
Guruji, what if on a path of monasticism, a person addresses an astrologer? The astrologer says, you know, in your life you'll have a wife, children, everything will be good for you in worldly life. All the stars say that everything is aligned for you, all the planets are in place. But the person, he got excited at first, and then after such a conversation, something starts to shuffle inside him. He thinks, well, maybe this really isn't for me after all. Could you comment on that? It really happens that person is told something in astrological sense, and you know, that's 99% of cases. And we even know a few people who, after talking to an astrologer, started to seriously doubt and basically changed their mind entirely.
That's how samsara tests you. Are you ready for the path of liberation, the path of sannyasa or not? That's exactly why we ask those who want to become sannyasis to have such a chart made. It's a test of your determination. If I were to order an astrological chart, I would ask the astrologer to make the chart I need. Possibly I'd have to pay 3 times as much for it. It's not the planets that guide you, but God. God is above astrology. Astrologers speak the truth, but only up to the level of the Vishuddha chakra, up to their own level. Everything above the Vishuddha chakra depends on you and on divine grace. Otherwise, there would not have been a single liberated person in the entire history of the earth, not a single saint, because astrologers say something to everyone. And so what? The path to liberation is precisely as such. To develop your strength to such an extent that no planet can harm you is to rise above. A planet's influence only reaches the element of space over the 5 elements. But where there is Mahatattva, the highest element of consciousness, the Atman, even the planets are powerless there. So it's not a sentence, it's a challenge. But if you have little faith, you think it's a sentence and just give up. But if you have strong faith, you understand that it's a challenge. So it means that I need to work 5 times harder since I have such planets.
So is it right that these planets, what they mean in a worldly sense is that you have certain qualities, certain favorable qualities specifically for the material world? And those who become monks usually are with favorable qualities as well. In other words, it's an indicator that you will be efficient in service, but on the other hand, someone might look and say, oh, here you have nothing good in the material world, so you should just become a monk.
Well, yes, it also depends on the interpretation. When people say you have such a wonderful horoscope, it means you have a lot of merits. If you direct those merits toward worldly things, everything will go well for you. Like Buddha, for example, he had a very good horoscope. He could have become the ruler of the whole world, but he was wise enough in spirit. He directed all his merits energy towards something else. There are other cases like this as well. Samsara always dictates something to us. But we have free will. With our free will, we can move towards God. And even if that free will is insignificant, we can call upon divine grace, which will override all the laws of Káma, all the laws of astrology. So, Tripura Rahasya, Mahatmya Khanda, chapter 15. Kings, princes began to gather for battle. Against Káma. Káma decided to fulfill the will of the gods, but in the world of humans, this was not understood. Verovrata, the king of the human world, Shri Vdyapati, his advisor, commanded Sudhriti, and Varthhana, the warlord. So they began to gather troops to fight against Káma.
Chapter 15. Then Sudhriti systematically divided this great army. He placed the king's son, Shatrunjaya, together with the phalanxes in the center. He himself took the lead, riding on an elephant, surrounded by 20 phalanxes and warlords. On the left, he stationed Shatrughna with 20 phalanxes. On the right, he placed Bhima with 20 phalanxes, and at the rear, he positioned Samaratapana with 20 phalanxes. Outside, at the rear, followed great heroes wielding tridents and spears who never left the battlefield. On the right were the mace bearers, on the left countless heroes holding spears and discs. In such a way, Sukriti divided the army and reported to the prince who was advancing at the front, himself riding an elephant, moving to meet Káma with a great army. At that moment, Narada arrived and presented himself to Indra as a Kandapala, a Shatamaka. He saw him shining like a silver mountain, dressed in a deer skin, his body smeared with ash.
Shatamaka is another name for Indra. Does somebody know how it translates? It is the one who has performed 100 sacrifices. It is believed that if a mortal king performs 100 great yagyas, sacrifices such as the Ashvamedha yagya or the Rajasuya yagya, he can take Indra's position. That is, such blessings and energies are invoked into his subtle body that in his next life he can be reborn as Indra. Therefore, it is traditionally believed that to attain the position of Indra, one must perform 100 great yagyas, shatamaka. And anyone who performs them becomes an Indra in some realm of the universe, in their own personal universe. Since there is not just one Indra, there may be many, because there is not just one universe, but a multiverse.
Narada saw Indra shining as Shatamaka, like a silver mountain clad in a deerskin, his body smeared with ash, nourishing the earth like an autumn cloud with water, dwelling in the heavens, swift as the wind. Narada appeared to report to Indra, seated on his elephant, about the battle with Káma that he is witnessing. The Lord of the Gods then dismounted from his elephant, and bowing his head at the sage's feet, honored him with visible reverence as is proper. Standing before the Lord of the Gods, Narada said, "O Sutraman, do you see the great royal army drawn up and ready, looking like an endless ocean? How can Káma alone accomplish your goal, when only by the great grace of Shri can this difficult task be achieved? For his power is still in its infancy, like a seed, like a banyan tree, which can hardly sprout through stone, sending out branches and shoots. Likewise, Káma alone cannot overcome the royal army, which is countless. This appears to be disrespectful. Therefore, together with the Soma of gods, approach Káma from behind and show reverence to Káma and Lakshmi. Otherwise she, the mother of the world, will be angered by your disobedience." Hearing these kind words from Narada, the king of the gods, realizing that he was right, decided to go. Having bowed to the divine sage, he, together with the army of the gods, set out to aid Káma, surrounded by a throng of Maruts and Pitris. Seeing Shakra arrive with the host of gods, Káma, pleased in his mind, honored them inwardly and said to Shakra and the gods, "O Lord of the gods, look upon this great army which has appeared like an ocean, striking fear into the heart. It shines with countless banners fluttering in the wind atop swift chariots, with elephants like blue mountains draped in red coverings and adorned with various metals, and with horses like surging waves surrounding everything on all sides." Hearing Káma's words, then said, Shakra, "Listen, Káma, how can you alone withstand, surrounded on all sides by this great and fearsome army with so many heroes?" Hearing these words, Káma, his eyes red with anger, said, "Listen, Shakra, I have never spoken a lie before. This army will be destroyed before your very eyes in half a moment. Do not doubt it. I speak the truth to you. It will happen before it reaches. Know this, Lord of the Gods."
This is a battle between gods and men. This battle takes place within the yogi. It is a battle between human nature, which is oriented toward the material senses, and the subtle divine forces, the subtle divine energies. When a sadhu practices, various battles unfold in the stream of his consciousness. The battle with the egoism, the battle for awareness, the battle to strengthen faith, the battle for pure vision, the battle for attentiveness and contemplative self-liberation. Many different battles take place in the stream of his consciousness, and in each of these battles the sadhu must prevail. Even the battle with sleep during meditation against the dullness or agitation that arises is a battle for mindfulness, for remaining in awareness. These are micro-level battles. On the micro-level, this is not something we can see with our earthly eyes. It is not a story that can be recorded in history textbooks. That is why often scholars encounter these epics, but when it comes to Indian history, they say nothing is clear. There is no chronology, no exact events. There are only some myths, epics, and fairy tales. The fact is that all the epics described, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Vishnu Purana, are not stories of physical battles, but of transphysical, internal, astral battles. These battles took place in the minds of the rishis and sadhus, which they could observe in the minds of people. And in order to help spiritual people purify their minds, they gave and passed on these stories. It is also a description of the transphysical battles between humanity, universal consciousness, and divine consciousness during the creation of the world.
Hearing these words, the gods led by Indra honored him with smiles and exclamations. "Well done," they said, standing all around. At that moment, an army approached. Káma, seeing the great army standing before him, stepped forward, holding his shining bow. As soon as Káma stepped forward, Indra and the gods surrounded him from the front to fight on the great land. While these two great armies faced each other, a tremendous noise arose. It was produced by martial musical instruments, mridangas, drums, trumpets, and conch shells mixed with the lion-like roars of the warriors, striking fear into all. With the clashing of weapons, both armies tried to outshout each other. A battle began between the gods and men. In it, mighty heroes, as powerful as lions, armed with many weapons and skilled in their use, met each other in single combat. They fought using equal weapons.
One Mahasiddha came to the palace of the Maharaja. The Maharaja honored him and then, during the meal, asked, "So, what's new in the universe? They say you travel between worlds." Mahasiddha replied, "The gods are fighting the Asuras." The king said, "How can you prove that?" Mahasiddha stretched out his hand, and at that very moment, something fell down, a piece of debris from a Vimana. Here is a weapon of the Asuras struck down by the gods.
They fought with each other. Charioteers fought charioteers, elephants with elephants, horsemen with horsemen, infantry with infantry, archers with archers, mace bearers with mace bearers, swordsmen with swordsmen, club wielders with club wielders, those armed with Bhushundi spears and axes with those armed with Bhushundi spears and axes. To battle, they lined up in such order like gods and asuras. An hour passed as they stood motionless. All of them had come to this righteous war, desiring victory. They stared intently at each other and at the weapons raised. Then, mortals and gods clashed, and the battle began, noisy and terrifying, enough to make one's hair stand on end. Shouting swear words, frowning and narrowing their eyes, they spoke in a less varied manner. "Stop and look at me. I will take your life. No one will save you. I will send you to the Yama's abode. Curse you, you, non-Aryan bastard spouting so much nonsense. Now your life has come to an end. The Creator has decided that I will kill you, and no one else will save you. Run."
Bastard, as everyone knows, it is someone illegitimately born.
In this glorious, terrible, fear-inspiring battle, consumed by rage, no one recognized themselves or others. Then gods fought against gods and mortals against mortals. The dust kicked up by the armed forces obscured the sky. A rain of weapons pouring down concealed everything around, and darkness enveloped the battle. Blinded by rage, the combatants could not tell friend from foe. And in the heat of battle, they could not distinguish the earth, the sky, or the directions. Day and night, the battle raged on with their own weapons, and they destroyed one another. At that time, the son of Shakra, Jayanta, arrived, surrounded by a host of Vasus, riding upon the son of the elephant, Airavata, burning.
According to the Kshatriya code of honor, one must fight with one's own weapon, with which you start the battle. The Vasus arrived. Who are the Vasus or Vasudevas? They are gods, attendants of Indra. They are also a part of Shiva. In general, in the Vedic pantheon of 33 gods, there are the Vasus, the gods of the earth. They are called the fathers, the divine spirits. There are also the Rudras. They are called the grandfathers, the gods of the air. And there are the Adityas, who are the great-grandfathers, the gods of the heavens. Now, Vasu is often translated as brilliance or radiance. They also often signify the good, the virtuous, those who are beneficent. It is a group of 8, though in other sources 10 deities are described in the Puranas and the Vedas. Apas, water; Dhruva, the pole star; Soma, the moon; Dara, the earth; Anila, the wind; Agni or Anala, fire; Pratyusha, the dawn; and Prabhasa, radiance. These are the 8 Vasus. And these 8 Vasus also took part in this battle as the retinue of Káma.
Burning with rage, he appeared before Sudhriti and the great army. A battle took place between them, a continuation of that terrible hour. After this, the great army of the gods was defeated by Sudhriti's army. Everywhere, severed legs, heads, arms, sides, eyes, ears, and noses were scattered about. Troops of gods, losing their lives, fell to the earth. Some had their lives taken from them, while others were only half dead. Some gods were unconscious, others in mortal fear. With their eyes closed, struggling for breath, they glanced at the distant heroes, slowly inhaling and exhaling. Realizing what had happened, others fled in fear. Seeing that the army of the gods was defeated, the host of Vasus, led by Savitri, began to press the great army of Sudhriti, which was raging like an ocean. Pressed by the Vasus, the great army of Sudhriti was scattered like clouds by a swift wind. Some were cut in two, right down the middle. Some had their arms and legs cut off. Others were cut completely in half. Some were crushed just like mustard seeds being ground down. Others, seeing what had happened to the army, fled in fear, but could not cross the rivers of blood. Others fled, pursued by the Vasus, and failing to reach shelter, fell into seas of blood. Some drowned in the turbulent rivers of blood. Some swam, paddling with their hands, but drowned at every step. Some climbed onto dead elephants to save their lives, as if they were distant islands. Some crossed on the wreckage of chariots, as if on boats in the ocean. Others crossed the rivers of blood on chariots and horses. Seeing the defeat of the army, the son of Sudhriti, Ranatira, the young diamond-hard hero, mounted a chariot adorned with gold and jewels, and in anger aimed his bow at the Vasus before him, and he cried out loudly to his fleeing warriors, come back, it is ignoble for you to flee. Dharma, fortune, and glory are cut off from the one who flees. It is a disgrace to your lords who laid down their bodies in battle." Having said this, he addressed the Vasus with these words, "Shame on you for attacking the weakened and cowardly with weapons. For now that's how it is, but look at me standing before you who has lost his heroes, who have scattered in fear. Look at me and show me your strength, and I will immediately meet your strength with my own." The Vasus, hearing these words spoken by Ranatira, simultaneously rushed at him like bees to nectar. But Ranatira stood on his chariot in the midst of the Vasus, motionless, like a golden mountain surrounded by small hills. Then the Vasus rained arrows on him from all sides. Then they launched a torrent of spears, darts, swords, and arrows at him. By the rain of the Vasus' weapons, the commander's son was overthrown. Seeing this, his army, standing in the distance, thought he was dead, like an elephant surrounded by lions. No one could understand anything. Then, in half an instant, with a light movement of his hand, he deflected the rain of weapons, cutting each into 8 pieces and firing 3 arrows at each of them. Seeing such amazing power, gods and mortals praised him from all sides with the cries, "Well done!" Then the Vasus formed a circle with various weapons, but he successively repelled the stream of weapons, countering each one. He alone fought the 8 in this great battle, spinning like a potter's wheel. An hour passed in the battle with the host of Vasus. Spinning like a potter's wheel, he fought face to face with all of them, and struck each one in the chest with sharp arrows. Cutting down each of their flags and striking 4 horses each, he quickly took the heads of the charioteers with these arrows. With a sharp sword he struck the Vasus in the chest. Deprived of their horses and chariots, the Vasus were greatly distressed and fell to the ground in a faint like trees without roots. The fall of the Vasus in the army of the gods was met with loud cries of disappointment and gloom. In the army of men, loud cries of glory arose. At that moment, a Vasu named Savitra recovered from his faint. He struck Ranadira with 3 sharp arrows and made roar as if the lion.
So the son of Sudhriti, the commander of the troops, Ranadira, fought with the Vasus, who were on the side of Káma. This whole battle is between the subtle and the gross. All these descriptions are meant to glorify the greatness of the goddess Tripura. These are all texts about greatness. And we read about the greatness of Brahman, the greatness of Ishvara, that is Shiva, the greatness of Shakti, the goddess, the greatness of Atman, our inner self, the greatness of the chosen deity Dattatrya, the greatness of the Guru Tattva, which can awaken the Sadguru within us. And all these different texts give us the experience of Divya Bhava. A question?
It doesn't really seem like the guna of sattva, actually, or in fact at all.
No, this is not the guna of sattva, it is rajas. The guna of sattva is born in the process of overcoming rajas. If you noticed, humans and the lower gods are fighting, right? That is the gross nature and the subtle. And the higher gods, Mahadev, Brahma, Vishnu, Lakshmi, Tripura, what are they doing? They are watching, and for them it's their game. They have a completely different understanding of what is happening. For them, it is a manifestation of their creative will and the manifestation of their power of imagination. And this is an inner battle. Likewise, within us, our human nature fights with our subtle nature, while our divine nature doesn't get involved. It observes. And so this inner battle, it is internal, it is illusory. It's like a game, but it's for the sake of Dharma on the side of the higher gods. That is, Divya Bhava and Sattva Guna arise in the process of victory over Rajas. That's the meaning.
Struck by Savitra's arrows, the enraged Ranadira broke the crescent bow that Savitra held in his hand. Then, with all his might, he launched a mace at him, striking horses alike clouds, and hit the Ranadira's chest with that mace. This terrifying, lightning-like mace Ranadira shattered into 3 pieces in mid-air with an ease. Then, holding a sharp sword and a beautiful shield, Savitra rushed at Ranadira's chariot, broke his bow, and in anger cut off the charioteer's head with his sword, along with his crown.
It is believed that when a person listens to the Tripura Rahasya Mahatmya Khanda, such descriptions of battles burn away their sins, helping to burn away their inner kleshas and states of obscuration.
Enraged by the loss of his bow and charioteer, Ranadira, the destroyer of enemies, took out his shield and sword. But as soon as he took out them, the swift Savitra immediately broke them. He also instantly broke the mace, spear, and trident that Ranadira had drawn. Seeing the skill of Savitra's sword, the king of the gods honored him with cries of glory. This enraged Ranadira, and using his fist, which was as strong as a lightning strike, he struck the Vasu in the chest in this great battle. He flew back 5 steps and fell dead. Half an hour later, the mighty Savitra again rushed at Ranadira. With his bare hands, he broke the Vasu's shield, threw away his sword, and broke his knee. That was amazing. Then they began to fight each other with their fists. An hour later, Ranadira, pushing Savitra so he had lifted off the ground, then grabbed him by the lapels and punched him in the head. Struck by the fist, Savitra fell to the ground, spitting blood.
Such a fantastic divine action scene. Hollywood scripts don't even come close.
Realizing that Savitra was as lifeless as an elephant attacked by a lion, the Lord of the Gods sent Jayanta to rescue him. Then Jayanta, with great speed, struck Ranadira in the back with a huge spear, thereby violating the law, dharma, of the Kshatriyas. Struck by the spear, Ranadira fell breathless to the ground. At this time, the son of the great Indra, with difficulty, brought the half-alive Savitra to Indra's side. Thus ends the 15th chapter of the Tripura Rahasya, Mahatmya Khanda.
Everything will be fine in the end. It will all end with the contemplation of the beautiful city on the peak of Meru, the beautiful abode of Tripura Sundari, with the glorification of Tripura. Any questions?
Guruji, so this battle, what is its essence? Is it that sattvic egoism is fighting with gross tamasic rajasic egoism, or how should one understand this? And do higher gods observe this from the sideline, right? So here is the king. He realized that he should focus on Shiva and that all these movements are not related to him, but Shiva told him to be involved in it, so he agreed. So if we interpret this in terms of the spiritual path of a sadhu, that is, a person lives his life and begins to be led astray by subtle things, by some desires of subtle egoism, then by gross ones, depending on how karma unfolds. And then he realized he needs to leave all this and follow the path of sannyasa. So the king sort of took the path of sannyasa when he went directly to Shiva, bypassing everything else. Did I understand this correctly?
Well, generally you could say so. To go against the kleshas, against the mind, against your limitations, that is the path of sannyasa, yes. The path of sannyasa means overcoming your lower nature, bridling it with self-discipline in the name of Shiva, in the name of the inner Shiva. But in the process, we discover that Shiva is not alone. He has Shakti, his energy. Therefore, we take refuge in the 5 treasures, Shiva and his energy, Shakti. Shiva is the renunciate power of consciousness. Shakti is dynamic, playful, blissful, happy, joyful, and blessing. But in the process, before we realize the aspect of Shakti, we go through a misunderstanding of this Shakti. And all these battles of various clarifications, the elimination of ignorance and misunderstanding.
Guruji, so eventually does all of this end, as you said, with the contemplation of the beautiful city of Tripura Sundari? So does this mean that the gods and humans eventually came to some kind of agreement and each took their place in the universe, but in a new capacity, so to speak, without any claims that some rule while others obey? How should we understand this?
We will read on this. There are negotiations ahead. Everything is still to come. The subtle fights the gross. But in the process of such a battle, an understanding of purity, of pure vision arises. And then all energies settle evenly in their places. There is a transformation of the subtle body and mind into a mandala, a divine mandala, the discovery of the inner deities. That is the purpose of tapas, the purpose of sannyasa, to discover the inner deities and transform oneself into a divine mandala, to restore to the throne of inner existence the inner Shiva and the inner Shakti.
May I ask another? So the root of this whole story is to get rid of egoism, of duality. That is, the gods are in their duality, humans are in their duality, and they are trying to sort things out with each other.
Yes, in order to learn to be a conductor of the purest divine will.
So here, the king of men, the Jiva, he realized that it's not about all this, it's about Shiva. And Indra too will later realize the same thing, obviously, is that correct? And in the end, they will understand that they are one, that they are in Brahman, that they are Shiva in their essence. And then this mandala you spoke of is formed.
It's something like this. The meaning is always the awakening of Brahma Ahambhava and the establishment of Divya Bhava.
Namah Shivaya, Shivaya. Shiva Shivaya Namo. Shiva Shiva Hara Hara Haraya Namo. Hara Hara Shiva Shiva Shivaya Namo. Hara Hara Mahadeva. Hara Hara Mahadeva. Hara Hara Mahadeva. Hara Hara Mahadeva. Om Namah Shivaya Shivaya Namo. 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 Hara Hara Mahadeva. Hara Hara Mahadeva. Hara Hara Mahadeva. Sadashiva Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya Shivaya Namo. 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 Om Namah Shivaya Shivaya